How are you today?
Good. How are you?
Doing good. Busy, busy.
Oh, I bet.
Um, so fill me in on what you're wanting. I have an idea because we've spoken about it a couple of times, but what you're trying to achieve with Chop and RZA here.
Right. So, well, right now the main focus is Chop, especially because it sounds like when he is going to daycare with you guys, he's starting to show a lot more of his at-home personality,
Okay.
where he is kind of a busybody. He's barking all the time, trying to see what's going on. Basically, is the fun police. And if he hears a noise that he doesn't know how to react to, his first instinct is to bark.
Sure.
Like he's getting that over there. And it sounds like he's also getting a little fresh when there are corrections being made. As far as I know, Enrique did say that he showed him some attitude when he went over to correct a barking instance. So I wanted to work on that, but I also just wanted to see exactly what do you guys see there that you think that he should work on, because like I said, it sounds like what he's doing at home is what he's doing over there. So you guys see pretty much what we see, and then what do you guys think needs to be is like the primary thing that needs to be worked on with him?
Well, one thing I noticed was the other day he was in the pen with, I think he was either by himself or he was with another dog, but RZA wasn't in the pen. And he kept barking. Mm-hmm. And I was remoting him to correct him. And I went as high as, I believe, like 80 to like 90 before he finally like settled. And, but it was still like a little piney. Mm-hmm. Have you noticed that with him?
And, that's the weird thing about it, because he couldn't be bothered with RZA at home. Like right now, Chop is sitting on place, fast asleep in our dining room. I don't know if you can hear the commotion in the background. That's RZA playing with a toy. But normally RZA will try to play with him, kind of like, honestly, he'll try to rush him to play with him, and Chop will either escape to place or into his own kennel, but he doesn't want to be bothered with RZA when we're at home. So that whole thing of being completely anxious, wondering where RZA is anytime that he's out of range and out of view is surprising to me.
Okay. I mean, it's that stuff can happen. It's not super common where like the like out of the element, something like that, especially attachment stuff. Usually attachment stuff is all over the place.
Right.
But otherwise, like he does seem calm. I mean, not calm, but like comfortable, which is most likely where, like you said, the Chop, the personality of Chop is coming through. Mm. I believe the first one to notice that was Brianna. Mm-hmm. But I'm not sure. Well, I have an idea, but Brianna's soft-spoken and she has a soft energy. Mm-hmm. But almost always when a dog has issues, it's always with Brianna. Okay. So, but that you said that Enrique saw a bit of that as well. Tells mm-hmm. me that it's what you noted, like he's not liking the confrontation and being told what not to do.
Right.
So for within the home, because here it's simpler for us. It's more so, like I know how I'd go about addressing it. Because I think with you sent Chop to a board and train. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And I think there was 2 board and trains. One that was positive, and then you went back for like the e-collar.
No. So what we did was we originally had done the board and train with RZA, and then with the timing of it, and also because RZA had some weird health issue, he had to end board and train early. But when we wanted to send him back, we decided to send him back and Chop as well. And apparently that made a big difference because they saw things with RZA that they didn't see until we brought Chop over. Like Chop was in a different room. RZA is frantic, panicking, trying to find out where he is, which, I mean, that's how he is. Just because, but that's how he is, I'm sure, while he's there, and also.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
So he's only done the one board and train, and they said that he was great while he was there. But I mean, even when we went to pick him up, he was like nervous barking and just really anxiously pacing. And that's something that he does do here, is that he'll kind of just pace back and forth like he doesn't know what to do with himself. So I try to give him the job of going on place or going in the kennel and, you know, structured time. But when he has any moment of free time, that's what he tends to do, is just pace anxiously. And I don't know, I guess it's just like he's just got some anxiety issues, and I'm not really sure how to improve that. And I guess that's the big thing. But board and train didn't really do anything about it. And I know the major thing that we also brought him there for is just because he'll get so anxious, like if he barks and he knows he's not supposed to bark, he will immediately just submission pee. And it got to the point where, and I know I've mentioned this before, where he has a diaper on. He has a belly band on almost all the time because he would just do it so often, and we would be constantly cleaning up. It would be just easier to just throw that in the washer rather than have to clean up a mess every single time and give him a bath.
And this is Chop, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
How long has Chop done that?
Oh gosh, it was even before RZA, so I think probably like
a long time.
Yeah, probably like almost 2 years, and he's just turned 3, so for a fair amount of time.
But he didn't do that always. It's something that like developed later. He didn't do that as like a puppy.
Right. And sorry, my boyfriend Kanha is here too. Sorry.
No, it's okay. What's your name, sir?
My name's Kanha.
I'm sorry?
Kanha?
Kanha.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, cool. Sorry, I don't want to mispronounce it.
All good. I've heard all the pronunciations.
So I've been called Jose, you know, so I feel your pain. So what kind of food are they eating?
Right now they're both eating Canada, which I'm actually thinking about changing to Purina Pro plan. I actually just looked up some stuff on it last night just because they have more veterinary approved tests for it. I've played around the idea of raw, but I just think that it's just, I know I don't have the time
For sure.
Go to it. So Purina Pro plan is what they're going to get transitioned to after they finish their Canada.
Okay. So Pro plan sucks.
I see.
And I know they have all the studies and stuff, but they also back a lot of veterinarians. And I actually just have another client who her dog was on Signature, which I had suggested to her. And then she ended up switching to Pro plan because that study came out about the heart disease and the grain-free. I'm not sure if you heard about that.
Because he was on Signature, Chop was on Signature before, and that's why we switched him over to Canada. Yeah,
so Signature is better than Canada. Canada is definitely better than Pro plan, but Pro plan is definitely like not good. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of like, how do you say, drama in the dog world, because dogs are, of course, how do you say, I don't want to say commodity, but it's a business, you know, and you know it's about making money and stuff. And I know back when I first started my career, like they had a spokesperson come out for Purina for pedigree or something like that. Mm-hmm. And think of that food as like McDonald's, but like an even lower degree in terms of quality of food.
Right.
And you know, I remember I raised my hand and I asked the question, which was the veterinarian was the owner of the clinic. And I was like, what about this? And I called out like all this stuff that's clearly just not healthy for dogs. And the veterinarian just like dismissed me. I was like, no, like our studies show this and that, blah, 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 blah. And then like, obviously everybody believed the veterinarian because it's the veterinarian and not some random, you know, young 20-year-old kid. But it's because they're backed by these companies. That's why like breeders sell Pro plan and stuff, because they're backed by the companies. And then the breeder's job is then put the puppies that grow up onto the food, you know, blah, 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 blah. The food that we recommend is, you know, we're not backed by anybody. It's just good food that's nutritionally sound and has good quality ingredients and stuff like that. So I would advise against the pro plan.
Okay.
If it's more so like budget stuff, then it's, then it is what it is. I don't care. But definitely, if you're thinking about nutrition, one, I can put you in touch with Maddie. She's more than happy to help you. But definitely, if they were on Signature before, Signature is very good. I used to have my dogs on it. I only switched because my Lexi, my pit, started having allergy issues, so I put her on a brand of food that's made in small batches, so it's never on the shelf sitting. So there's no preservatives and stuff. Which I'm happy to put you in contact with her as well. She owns like a small little shop in like northwest Chicago here. But definitely Signature is the one of the better foods, and there's even better foods than Signature, but Signature is definitely top of the line. And the only reason why I ask about what you feed them is because I'm trying to figure out if there's something else causing Chop's frequent peeing when he's, in a panic state or whatever.
Right.
The other question I would ask is, does he drink a lot of water?
Not really. Really, I think he has just maybe twice a day. There are moments where he's just like, okay, I'm thirsty, and he'll just go and he'll drink for a little bit, and then he's done. But he doesn't just sit at his water bowl all day. That's more RZA.
Okay. How often does this whole panic urination thing happen?
So it has been a little while now, actually. But I'm trying to think when the last time it was. Maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. Or actually, no. I'm like, it was last week when our groomer, because we have a groomer that comes to the apartment, and he's had the same groomer since he was about 8 weeks. So he knows her, he loves her. He knows that he can push the boundaries, or he try to when she gets there, because her only job is to groom, which I understand. She's not here to reinforce whatever we're teaching, but he'll get excited, and then I'll correct, because he's constantly barking at any noise. I will correct him, and then he just starts peeing. So that would be the most recent. But yeah, definitely when there are guests over, because he tries to push things whenever guests are over, he will, and then I'll correct, then he'll pee. But
and it's not, I don't think it's triggered by the correction, because he'll just bark, and he knows he's done something wrong, so he'll look at us, and then that's when he'll start peeing, because he just realizes oh fuck, I shouldn't have barked or something like that.
Right.
It's not like after the correction, typically.
I don't feel like he's that's so much as because he knows he did something wrong. Because in the dog world, there's no concept of right and wrong.
Yeah.
It's what you allow and what you don't allow. I think what happened is he's learned the pattern of, when I do this in this context, this happens in response. And it's just created a sequence. And sometimes you don't get a certain step, like let's say the remote part of the sequence, and he just jumps to the next thing that would happen. So, and you're saying this happen when people come over is when you see this typically, it sounds like?
Lately, yes, but and also it's kind of hard to pinpoint it, because we would see it a lot at our old apartment, because it was a high-rise apartment. We'd hear a lot of noises all the time, so it was he had a lot more opportunities to bark. This neighborhood's a lot quieter.
Sure.
A lot less noise to tackle, so I think that's really the primary reason why we haven't seen as much of it anymore, is just because there aren't many more, I guess, unfamiliar noises for him to bark at. And
that makes sense. What I would suggest here, and this is as an experiment, have you ever just limited their water intake?
Kind of, sort of, but I see where you're going with it. It's just to do a genuine, just limiting the water.
Yeah, when it comes to stuff like that, there's a couple of things. Definitely, it sounds like overstimulation, and then he can't contain, and then it just happens. Whether it's through responsive remote or whatever, but it really just sounds like overstimulation. Because for a dog, when they go into a heightened state, like either anxiety, nervousness, fear, stimulation, it's like they literally can't control themselves. That's why some dogs, when the owners leave and they're in the kennel and they have separation anxiety, they'll get so anxious that they just can't hold their bowels or their pee, and they just empty themselves. So it kind of sounds similar with Chop here, except in an excitement sense. Because like when people tell me things, like I'm literally imagining in my head like everything that's going on and like trying to just piece together what's happening. So that's potentially it. And I always go back to just the basics. Sometimes just the simplest answers can help resolve things.
Okay.
So what I would do is, just as FYI, general rule of thumb is an ounce per pound for a dog, water a day. And I would just treat them like I'm like a puppy. I cut off water at 7 o'clock. If guests are going to come over at 6 o'clock, I might give them water at 4 and then cut it off and then take them for a potty break at 5:30 and then see what happens. And then if that ends up, it's kind of like a workaround. Because there's other answers that I have in mind, but the simplest one that I always approach is I go to just the basics of potty training and then see, does it help fix anything? And if it doesn't, then I go, okay, well, that didn't work. Let's now try like this approach or whatever.
Okay. And I forgot to throw in there because I think it did happen once, and Enrique told me about it, and that it happened once at the facility.
With peeing?
Yes.
I think that was RZA though.
So I know that with RZA it happened in the car ride on the way home. He was like freaking out, but I think it did happen with Chop once.
Okay. I'll double check with him. Because I thought it was RZA as well.
Right. I might be wrong. I've got two of them and they both
I'll double check.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah. So what's your goals here? Like, don't worry about like us at the facility, but just like your personal goals with these two guys.
Well, my goal with Chop for sure is for him to not have to wear the diaper anymore, and also to have, I guess, the anxiety that it's clear that he has to be more settled. And I'm not really sure how to get to what the root of that is. As far as with RZA, I know most of the stuff he's going through is just puppy stuff, but separation anxiety is RZA's big thing.
Okay.
And that me through the back.
Sure.
He will howl for as long as I'm gone, anytime that I'm gone.
Have you had any complaints?
No. I know that my neighbors did hear, but they haven't complained.
Okay. For the stuff that they, because I remember, I think we spoke briefly at Oz when I saw you one time about like you were teaching RZA the heel, I believe it was.
Right.
And I'm assuming Chop is supposed to have some sort of heel. Is that correct?
Yes, Chop is excellent outside with heel. He's off leash trained. He can sit at a snap heel to me or to Kanha anytime that we're out, no matter what distractions are going on. His heel is fantastic.
Okay. When you finished the board and train with Chop, what did the follow-up look like? What did they go over with you?
So primarily it was just kind of distraction work if there's something going on, or especially with RZA, because he was in the I'm going to ignore you phase, which was very short. If there's something going on, you call his name, always make his name fun, move around, make yourself more appealing than whatever is around you, and keep treats on you as much as you can. And what else was the take home from that? Do you remember?
They show you how to use a remote?
No, they didn't use remote. I had already been using remote myself for Chop, so I already knew that it did work. I started with a cheap one, and then I realized that wasn't doing anything, and that's when I upgraded to Educator brand. But they're purely positive for both of them.
I got you. So you implemented a remote. I thought you had they did food and then went back for e-collar.
No.
That's new.
No. The e-collar, Chop was already trained on e-collar before we brought him in.
So that's what I'm asking about is for Chop with the e-collar. How did they teach you with the e-collar?
They didn't. I had to teach myself with the e-collar. Lots of YouTube videos and learning, and I can tell I got somewhere. Like I said, he's really great with an e-collar heel, but everything else I had to teach. They, like I said, they're purely positive. They didn't do any e-collar work at all. I don't even think they would have listened to any ideas of e-collar or prong. Probably not.
Gotcha. Okay. So, okay. Because I'm trying to figure out. So, behaviorally, like to give you an example, I have a client that I see that comes from Highland Park. She has a Dutch Shepherd. You've probably seen his videos up on my channel. It's a cane. And she had a couple of trainers. Unfortunately, she was given a lot of misinformation, and then was able to get an e-collar. You know, she got the Educator Boss brand or model, and just kind of started implementing, I guess, what she thought, right? So the first class, and it may be a good watch for you. He is super anxious. Okay. So I'm asking a lot of questions. I'm like, what's going on here? Like, where is all this anxiety coming from? And it turns out that she always had him on continuous. And
I know we had recently talked about that, and I had changed him from continuous to momentary, both of them. I know that's actually been fantastic for RZA. He's been great with the heel walking because of that. For Chop, I mean, I don't know if we've really had an opportunity to see if there's been a big difference, but we've definitely turned on continuous for both of them, and they're both on momentary.
Good. So in her case, you know, it was the same thing. Like the dog kept yelping for everything, no matter where we were. So then finally, like I see the dog's neck, and I see when she tapped the button that it's a smidgen longer than what a momentary would look like. And then I'm like, "Are you on continuous?" And she goes, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Oh crap!" I'm like, "No, switch that to momentary." And she did. And because I understand where she was coming from, because he's reactive and all that stuff. And then the first thing that people tend to go to is just punish and harshly, right? I'm not opposed to that, but we have to do a lot of things prior to figure out, is other stuff going to work before we do such a harsh hit? Because it's so harsh, the dog panics and doesn't retain what it was for. Okay, so a week later, lo and behold, his anxiety levels dropped, and he's yelping far less frequently. Like it's like maybe like an 80 to like 90% drop in the times he yelps. And it was all just from removing continuous and putting him on momentary, because it was just, she was overloading him with stress of the punishers, but also he didn't know where they were coming from. Like he didn't know where they were coming from in terms of like why they were happening. You know, so then we started to shift things, and so that he was being taught to understand the e-collar as a communicator as opposed to a punisher. And even if she does have to remote him high, like it's not such like a blatant like, oh shit, what was that for? It's like, oh, okay, like I fucked up. This is why it's happening, you know? So it's all about how we layer in the remote collar, which is why I ask all these questions, because I'm trying to figure out, because more often than not, trainers teach e-collar wrong. Okay, like even the stuff on the internet is, in my opinion, wrong. Or like it's so like a couple that I like is like Sean O'Shea and then Jeff Gelman. There are a couple of trainers that I like, and they watched many years ago when they started. However, the way they teach e-collar is so complicated that for the average person, it's very difficult to pick up.
Okay.
And the way I teach it is very simple, both for the dog and both for the human. And it's nuanced, but it's not nuanced to the nth degree where it's like, you know, you're spending, you know, months and months, like just learning the skill before you can even get to your dog's behavior.
Right.
Okay. So what I would do here with these guys is, it's a pretty straightforward process, and then we just tweak it as we go along. I know you've been watching some of my videos and stuff, so I most likely have you just show me what you're doing.
Okay.
Okay. And then I would either, say, let's forget about that stuff and reset, or I might say, hey, good job, but we're going to make a couple of tweaks.
Okay.
The way I would approach it with these two guys is first, I have to see if they fully understand remote collar the way it's meant to be understood. Okay, which of course was a communicator and not something that comes randomly out of nowhere whenever they do something we don't like. Because you have to think, in their world, barking at the door when people come over isn't wrong.
Right.
Right. And technically, like on a scale of what dogs can do, like it's like, who cares? And then it gets annoying. So we definitely want to stop it, but it's not set. So if like someone knocks, most dogs go into territorial mode, they bark, they're like, who's here? Then the owner opens the door and the dog goes, oh, I love people because it's a person. And then they just like open up, no problem. And then, so the way people think that they would stop that is, one, they would place the dog, which is super common, or two, they would simply punish the dog for barking at the front door, okay, and give a consequence. What I do is instead I communicate with the dog, hey, thanks for letting me know, but you can settle down now. You don't have to be barking all over the place, and just chill when the guest comes in. And that's when we start to delve into behavior mode. And it's not, there's no sit, stay, down, come, place, heel, none of that stuff involved. It's really just you communicating to Chop and RZA that you're in charge of what's going on. Because as silly as it sounds, when you open the door for your guests, they don't know that you're letting them in. Okay, you know that as a human, this is my guest, or this is Pizza Hut, and I'm going to open the door, or whatever. The dog doesn't. So unless there's some kind of communication that says like, hey, it's cool, you can relax, what could potentially happen is all that stimuli is stacking, and then like, for instance, Chop is already at like, that threshold, and then you add in the consequence of remote, and then it pushes them over threshold, and then like he's all over the place. So it's like they're just theories. Like I don't know. I think maybe once I've come across a dog that peed with the front door. But it wasn't as frequent as like you're noting with Chop since the 2 years ago, whatever.
It's not necessarily the front door, because if somebody's at the front, or especially the way I know you've seen how our apartment is set up, especially if somebody's down there in that area, it's because they're coming here. So if they give one warning bark each, that's fine. I'm fine with one warning bark, but it's just, oh, I hear some children playing outside, I'm gonna bark at that. Or it's like other noises. I'm fine with the one warning bark just says, hey, I'm here, or hey, somebody's out the door. That's fine. But just like you said, when I let someone in and either they're trying to rush me to see who's at the door, or if Chop sees that it's someone that he likes and he's already on 11, so he's freaking out, whining, completely ignoring me, doesn't know how to settle, and then he's starting to transfer that energy to RZA, that's the problem.
So that's where the door exercise comes into play. Because you have to settle them down. I teach it all the time. It's nothing out of the ordinary, but obedience wouldn't be a factor there. Now, when it comes to the people, the children outside or whatever, you can absolutely stop that. Like just even without like I wouldn't even say no bark. I would just apply a consequence. But it's just ensuring that they understand the collar correctly, so that we don't put more stress on top of stress, essentially.
Right.
So the way I'd approach this, so then with RZA, so the whole concept here, and maybe you've seen this, like you've seen Lake's video, right? The anxious pity.
Right.
So like when they came to me, like there was a host of problems. Dog bit someone out in the yard. Dog is very reactive. Dog has separation anxiety, like all these things, right? And I go, when they had their first lesson, I go, I know the problem. I know these are the problems, okay? But what we're going to do, instead of tackling the problems head on, is instead just add some formal discipline, add some structure through the heel, my style, and then see what it fixes. Okay? It's almost always that approach. Every consultation that you see so far that we've had it's always that approach, because the only time that I would do a more direct approach of, oh crap, this dog needs to be corrected for their behavior, is whole on aggressive dogs. And these are dogs that are aggressive without needing to be provoked.
Okay.
So like I walk into the home when the dog just attacks me. It's unprovoked. Okay. Other dogs will bite, but I have to do something. I have to like touch them, or I have to trap them with the leash, or I have to like rush up to them. Like I have to do something to trigger the aggression.
Right.
That's very different, because there's a precursor before they respond, right? But then there's other dogs where it's literally just simply existing and they're like, I'm gonna bite you. Okay, so that dog is a direct approach, because leash walking and stuff has nothing to do with biting people. Okay. In Lake's example, Lake was just overloaded with stress. And when she would go outside, she was just stress on top of stress. So then I said, let's discipline her, let's chill her out, and then we see what it fixes. And for her, and this is where I would tell someone she was labeled aggressive, but that wasn't really an aggression case, because it was such a quick turnaround. Okay. So her reactivity went away, her separation anxiety went away. And then something else I forgot that they're struggling with went away, all with one class. Just one thing that I did. Okay. That's always that's like the theory, with the occasional, like every now and then I get a legitimately aggressive dog, then that's a little bit different. But so far, everything on YouTube has been, like Lake, similar to Lake, or whatever. Is I would revisit the heel with these two guys and go, how are you applying it? What does it look like? How are you teaching it? How are you correcting them? And then go, we need to change it, or we just need to make a few tweaks, and then we're going to see what those tweaks fix.
Right.
Okay. Another dog, for example, was Ruthie, whose video is up, and she was barking at everything within the home. And I did the same thing with them. I taught them my concept of heel, and then they said almost all the barking went away, other than barking at the front door when someone knocks, which is normal.
Right.
But she was the same thing. She lives in a townhouse or some kind of like building where there's a hallway and there's other residents in the hallway, but it's like a townhouse, like a apartment type style place. And people walking by, deliveries, all that stuff. She was barking at everything. And now she only barks when people knock. Because when we do the formal heel, my style, it can settle dogs down. And then once they settle down, because they have a kind of formal structure they understand, I go, what's left over that it didn't fix? Or if it didn't fix anything, then at least they know e-collar my way, and now we have to just transfer to everything else. Okay. So it might feel like you're backpedaling a little bit. That's normal. Later, I'm on a call. That's normal, because I get lots of dogs that are trained on e-collar, or other trainers on prong and food, and it's almost always has to be redone because of the way that they teach. Okay. But I'd make it simple. I'd revisit that and then see what happens. For RZA's separation anxiety, it's the same concept. Okay. And then, so it's usually, as you've seen, about 2 classes. And then I'm touching base with you going, are we seeing any shifts? Are we seeing any changes in the behavior within the home? And you might say after the first class, whoa, Jesse, like just that little change that we made with this, like, oh, like it's like 50% better. And I go, great. Now we're going to teach the next thing. And then we come back class 3. How's it going? Everything's going great, but we're struggling with this one thing here. I go, okay, cool. This is how we tackle it. Okay. Or it might be, one class to the next where I'm like, how'd it go? And you're like, no, it feels the same. And I go, okay, now we're going to do this. Now we're going to change gears and we're going to address it this way. So it's really play it by ear. I don't know how it's going to work. The dogs, they dictate that, how they progress. Right. I'd also give you other forms of correction, so you're not solely reliant on the e-collar to start applying within the home, because you're not always going to have it on you. Right. To help address other things as well, so you can keep a consistent consequence for behaviors. Question so far?
No. That the second part of what you said was really my major thing, is having something else other than the e-collar, because it's like I can't always have the remote next to me to always correct. So that's good. That's really good.
Right, because it's what I'm trying to be. In most cases, the issue is coming from something else. Okay, so like if there's lack of formal structure, and I'm not saying you haven't implied any structure because I know you have. You do the training. I see you when you come out. Like I see you have a regimen, right? Is human structure and dog structure is different. So like when I come into behavior cases, like owners will say like, oh, but I make my dog sit for their food and I make them sit before they go out the front door and all that stuff. And I go, right, but dogs don't do that to each other. Like dogs just bite the hell out of each other if they get out of line, And, I know you'll be doing consequence as well, but I'm trying to figure out like what's going on that's incorrect or that may be incorrect, that they're not perceiving it the way they're supposed to. And we want to make sure we clarify that conversation so that then they learn like, oh, okay, that's what that means. Okay, cool. Then I'll just relax now. And then we don't get into the other crap. Ideally, I will say that RZA looks to be just like an anxious dog genetically.
Right.
Have you seen that since you got him?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
He's always been anxious, always.
So that sucks because we can't make him unanxious.
Right.
But what I tell people is we help him or help them handle the anxiety better. Okay. And shooting for realistic and unrealistic expectations. So realistic would be, he's an anxious dog, but he's not whining and howling and all that crap when you like you said, when you leave and stuff.
Right.
Now that may need the unless you have one already, a bark collar. Have you tried that?
I haven't tried just a straight bark collar. And honestly, I haven't even had the opportunity to just leave, just given my schedule right now. But when I do leave, I just leave out the back. The last time that I have left where he knew that I left was July 23rd. So it's been, I know the exact date. It has been a while. So I just know that I just don't want to go through with the dramatics. So no, in short, no, I have not.
Okay. So what I would, so these things can go hand in hand. So bark collar would stop the symptom, and the symptom is barking.
Right.
Okay. The root is anxiety. So when I get my separation anxiety cases, like with Lake again, like she was not a real separation anxiety or aggressive case because one class was a 180. Okay, that's how I can tell that. When I have my real aggression or separation anxiety cases, they're classes, they're weeks of addressing the issue to get it to stop.
Right.
So it can work a couple of ways. One way would be, you do e-collar because that's what teaches RZA what e-collar is, and the bark collar addresses his behavior when you're not around, because the difficult thing about separation anxiety and why I dub it the hardest thing to fix is because it happens when you're gone.
Right.
Okay. And so like we had a dog here, his name was Mason. He was a board and trained for a rescue, and he came in for resource guarding and terrible separation anxiety. They dropped him off, and the first day, like he was howling like someone was killing him. And I got it done within 48 hours. But what I had to do was like max out the collar continuous and make him piss and shit himself with a real hard hit, because everything was making him squeal. He was biting and pulling at the bars, and like just it was a shit show. And I'm like, yeah, this is not going to happen. And I took my time to escalate, and I quickly learned that because he was just getting more and more agitated, that I was like, all right, you're one of those guys. So once he had that hit, all of a sudden he's like, holy crap, I've never felt that before. And then he was chill. But then what we needed was to have a bark collar on him, because if we ever put him without the bark collar, although he never went back to that intensity, he would push boundaries and like nibble at the kennel or like give little roof, like yips or whatever, but nothing compared to what he was prior. So the bark collar was present and it didn't go off, but just the presence of it alone was like, yeah, I'm not going to screw around with this. Okay. Now I'm not saying do that with RZA, but I get these really bad cases, and we're doing two things at once. we do the e-collar that teaches the dog what it is, how it works, structure to settle things down. What does that fix? Does it fix the separation anxiety? Cool. We don't need to even do anything with the bar collar. Oh, nope, he's still trying to howl. All right, let's get that bar collar. There's gonna be these two things in conjunction. And some dogs just, need the bar collar in order to just keep quiet when the owner is gone. To me, that's nothing good or bad. It's his anxiety levels.
Right.
What you noted, like, yeah, ever since we got him, he's been like that.
Right.
So, it's like medication, except in my experience, medication never works for these things. Threat of consequence does. Because nobody likes physical. And if having that bar collar present, he's like, yeah, I'm gonna just shut up and like just chill out because I don't want that thing to go off. Then it's just like it is what it is.
Right.
You have questions about that?
No, I don't think I have. No, do you have any questions?
No.
That's pretty straightforward.
And the way I'd approach it, like I would target the things you're wanting to target, like obedience wise, heel and recall are the two most important. It really feels like behavior is your primary concern.
Right.
So the way I would imagine this looking is, 2 classes on the heel, just kind of see what does it change. And then by class 3, we're delving into the behavioral stuff. If behavior is going well and you're like, holy crap, like that, like changing the psychology behind the e-collar made a world of a difference and like they're improving, then I just continue with obedience.
Okay.
So you get more control. Like, we definitely want to cover recall or whatever with RZA if you haven't done that with him yet. And then just, stationary control. Like I know you're talking about place and stuff. So that's good. So like, just the control that you haven't achieved yet with them. Since behavior is, so they kind of go side by side, where it's after we get the structure in and we start to see how behavior works out, then we might cover behavior. And then each class, it's just like, how's it going? And if it's like, yeah, we're making continued progress, everything is great, then I go, okay, cool, keep with that. We're going to teach something new today. Okay. Otherwise, if it's, no, we're still struggling with stuff, then it's, I give you answers on or approaches on what to do in order to address the behavior. And then, it's really just play it by ear.
Okay.
The only thing I will say is I think RZA is on the same collar as Chop, right?
Right. I know he needs a stronger one.
Yeah, because I remember one time he was flipping out here, and I had I put the e-collar on it was Chop's e-collar, and it was maxed out, and it was quite a few taps before he finally just settled.
Right.
So when at the appropriate level, my rule of thumb is if I don't get it changed by the first tap or by the third tap, I should get it done within 1 to 3 taps.
Right.
Like a shift in that behavior, and it was definitely a lot more than 3. So I would just be mindful of that. If you're wanting to keep them on that particular model of collar.
Right.
Anything else?
Well, I guess my last question would just be, so, when I had originally reached out, I was thinking maybe this was something to do, like, since they're already there at least once a week now that I'm back with school and Connor's back with work, would it be something to do while they're there? Because I know you guys do the daycare and train. Or would it just be something that would be better that we kind of just, we physically have to be there to improve those things?
So dogs are all about context. So going to Mason, and Mason had been trained by another facility and it didn't work. And then couldn't be foster because he bit the foster or whatever. And then came here, and then, after that, those first 2 days, which were really rough for him, once I got it in his head that crap wasn't going to fly, he was great. We never had any issues with them other than a couple of resource guarding moments. But other than that, like, he was a great dog, like, socially and all that stuff. We use them all the time for like our daycare dogs.
Right.
And then he got rehomed, and then they kept him. And I've worked with them a couple of times, because they got him right before COVID hit. So I didn't see him for a few months. but all of a sudden these behaviors are coming back because it's a different context.
That's what I figured. Okay. Yeah, that answers my question.
What we would do is, I would work with you because you spend the most time with them, so you would be the most influential.
Right.
Right. But when they would come here, that's why I told you earlier, I said, don't even worry about us here at the facility because we can stop it. I'm not worried about here. I'm worried about in your home.
Right.
Right. Because if they're doing that all week there, then when they come over here, it's gonna be steps forward, steps back.
Right. Right.
So if it's good structure at home and you're getting them to settle, and then they come here and then they get that same kind of structure, then everything works as a big kind of machine, you know what I mean?
Mm.
And we're on the same page, and then it's like, okay, cool. Like now everything is improving.
Right.
Okay. Because you are your dog's biggest influence. We're pretty big influences ourselves because we give structure, but the dogs will learn like, oh yeah, Jesse's, they'll do whatever they need to, whatever to shut us up. But then when we go back home, like mom and dad don't have that same skill set. It's not that you're not trying to, but maybe you're not doing it the same way. So then there's that miscommunication, which just then causes more stress, because it's not consistent.
Right.
So it takes more work. It takes longer, but you learn so much more. And in my opinion, it's more beneficial to the dog, coming from the owners and all that stuff than it is from us. If you didn't have the behavior stuff, I wouldn't care.
Right.
It's just obedience.
Yeah. And I agree. It's just, I know that's going to it's always hard now to find out when Kana and I's schedules sync up because he works so often. When he's not working, I either have clinicals or class. So that's what I was worried about. But I figured, I had a feeling that would have been the answer. So it's just going to have to be a scheduling thing.
Yeah. And I've worked with couples before where they have like a rotating schedule, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so everything's about time. Time allows you to see the changes. Time allows you to make mistakes. Time allows you to come back from class 1 to class 2 going, hey, Jesse, here's what we found out with what you taught us,
Right.
So it's not a bad thing other than, it could take a little bit longer than, we would like it to.
Right.
But, that's why I always, the way I teach, I tell everybody time is actually your best friend. Because it allows you to just learn a lot more about yourself, the dog, the remote, and all that stuff, make mistakes and all that, do your research, and then come back, and then you're a wealth of information for me. Right. And then I can go, okay, cool, this sounds like this is happening, so we're going to do this and this and this and this, to address things. And then maybe I don't see you for 3 weeks, but then you come back with 3 weeks worth of information. So I'm like, cool, and then here we go. So it's not a bad thing, it just might take a little longer.
Okay, yeah, okay, that's fine.
Anything else?
Nothing for me. Anything for you?
No, nothing I can think of off the top.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said already that, we're going to be the primary source that they're going to look to. And even inside of that, it would be, I know it's going to be more me compared to Kanha. And that's also just a scheduling thing. And I've always just been I guess, I wouldn't say alpha, but the one who usually has to.
The disciplinarian?
Yeah. But that's primarily just because I'm the one who's home the most.
Yeah.
I just, the way that things are going right now, it's granted me the ability to do what I need to do at home. So yeah. I'm really the one who catches the behavior, corrects the behavior, and all of these other things just because I'm just home.
Sure. And did you get RZA prior to quarantine?
We got him pretty much right before it started. I was like late February. So it was just crazy timing there.
So yeah, like I actually just had another consultation earlier, and same thing. She got her dog pre-quarantine, and then once things started to open up a bit, and she was taking her dog out more in the last, I don't know, like few weeks, she started to notice her dog lunging at people and kids, and all that stuff. And I'm like, yeah, it was the behavior was already there, and you didn't see it because of quarantine,
right?
She said prior to quarantine, she did happen to take the dog, those coffee shops and stuff, and she was very social.
Mhm.
And then I was like, well, in the beginning, it's like the honeymoon phase where everything's great. And all of a sudden, your dog finds their personality type within the home. And then you get the behaviors, or the quarantine itself just made the dog antisocial, because that's happened to a few other of my clients.
Mhm.
And also separation anxiety.
Right.
So that's a big contributing factor. So we definitely would start, when you're home with them and stuff. When they're not here, I'd help you implement a structure to start getting RZA used to not always being around you,
Right.
to replicate what it would be like, if you went to like a 9 to 5 or something like that.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
In terms of length of time, I'd probably just do a 6 week or suggest a 6 week program for you.
Mhm.
The way I approach this is I listen to what you're wanting and needing, and then I think about what I think you may need. And I give you like the bare bones minimum, which would be the 6 week. That's the 2 classes on the heel. And then I'm planning the rest on just behavioral stuff.
Mhm.
If that all works out great, then we would just continue with obedience, because behavior is doing fine. If you're wanting to ensure you get more control over RZA or something, then we have like the 9 and 12 week programs, which are more so geared towards, off leash obedience is the 12 week program. And then like the 9 week program is kind of like the in between, take my dog to the dog park and take my dog to a restaurant patio, but I'm never going to have them hiking off leash or something.
Right.
So it's right in the middle. You could even do a blend where you do the 6 week program targeting solely behavior. And if everything's great with that, and it turns out we took more time addressing behavior, but we got it done, and you wanted more control obedience wise, then you could do like a daycare and train or something.
Okay.
Because then, the behavior's out. The behavior is always the hardest part. Obedience is easy. It's a skill set. Put your butt down when I say sit, lay down when I say down, come to me when I call you. It's very simple. It's skill set stuff. It's the behavior stuff that's always going to be difficult for the client.
Right. And that's really my primary focus. Obedience is nice, but I need the behaviors to be controlled, because I can do, for the most part, I can do a good part of the obedience myself. It's just handling the behavior, what's the cause of it, and how do we work through it? That's my thing.
Okay. Yeah, so that's what I would suggest. If you decide to upgrade RZA, if you can find it, and Maria will send you this info, but if you can find it, I'd get him the Doctor 3500. I think I told you they just recently discontinued it.
Right. Yeah, you did mention that.
You can get a 2-dog version.
Mm-hmm.
And so it would be more powerful than Chop needs technically. But it just means he'd have a lower number.
Right.
Now, it doesn't have the function of locking numbers, because I believe you can lock them on each button for the.
That's fine. That's fine. I don't really use it, because RZA can go from 30 to 45 depending on what's going on outside. So the locking isn't really hugely necessary.
But yeah, that's what I would suggest. You can find that particular model of collar, but the 2-dog version, you can still find those in stock in some places. It's the single dog version that's hard to find. But Maria would send you the information for that. Otherwise, you would just tell her what you want to do time-wise.
Okay.
And then, 6 week, 9, 12, whatever. And then she'll get you all set up. And then we'll just, take it from there.
Okay. Sounds
Anything
good.
else?
No, that pretty much covers everything. I know we probably want to start with the 6 weeks, and then kind of it'll probably be touch and go, see how they do.
Yeah, for sure. And then if you guys are going to be like, if it's schedules are inconsistent, whatever,
Right.
obviously going to be longer than that. So that's fine.
Right. That's our major thing. We'll have to just sit down and talk schedule and see when we can actually get things started.
Sure. Definitely the first 2 classes are the most important.
Right.
And then now that we record things as well, like even if you can't make it there, or one of you can't make it, you can always just refer to your very own video.
Got it.
So that's another thing to consider. Okay.
Okay.
All right, Sydney and Connor, or Conhar, right?
Connor.
There you go.
Kanye before, so yeah.
Yeah, it was a pleasure talking to you guys. If you need anything else, you let us know. Otherwise, Marie will get in touch with you, okay?
Sounds good. And other than that, they'll see you Friday.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
You too.
Have a good one.